A cop sprayed a stray dog with pepper spray, but regretted it when he saw its owner. Officer Mark Reynolds had seen plenty of stray dogs in his years patrolling the city streets. Most were harmless, scavenging for scraps or seeking shelter in alleyways. But this one, a scruffy, golden-furred mutt, was different. It was barking aggressively outside a small grocery store, scaring pedestrians and refusing to move when approached. Mark sighed, adjusting his belt. "All right, let's not make this harder than it needs to be," he muttered. He reached for his canister of pepper spray, a last resort but necessary in his mind. With a quick motion, he aimed and released a mist of the burning spray toward the dog. The reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. The dog yelped, staggering backward, rubbing its face against the pavement in agony. It whimpered, its tail tucked between its legs, before turning to flee. Mark had dealt with aggressive animals before, but something about this one made guilt creep into his chest. Maybe it was the way it didn't fight back, the way it seemed more confused than hostile. He took a step forward, wondering if he had been too harsh. Then he heard a sharp voice behind him. "What the hell did you just do to my dogs?" Mark turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered man in military fatigues striding toward him. His face was hard, his fists clenched. "Sir, Mark started, but the man had already dropped to his knees beside the whimpering dog. "Buddy, it's okay," the man whispered, pulling the dog into his arms. The animal trembled but nestled into him, still crying softly. The soldier's eyes burned as he looked up at Mark. "This stray is my service dog," he spat. "I just got back from deployment. He slipped his leash, and I've been searching for him all day." Mark's stomach twisted. A service dog? He had just blinded and hurt an animal that had likely been trained to help this man through battles far worse than anything he'd seen on the streets. I didn't know," Mark stammered, but it sounded weak even to him. The soldier didn't answer. He just lifted Buddy into his arms and walked away, leaving Mark standing there, shame heavy in his chest. Mark stood frozen, watching the soldier carry his injured dog away. His chest tightened with regret, and his training told him to let it go, just another day on duty. But his conscience wouldn't allow it. "Wait," he called out, jogging after the man. "Let me help." The soldier stopped but didn't turn around. "Haven't you done enough?" His voice was thick with restrained anger. Mark exhaled. He knew he deserved that. "I didn't know he was yours. I thought he was aggressive." Now the soldier turned, his jaw clenched. "Buddy isn't aggressive. He was trained to protect." He was probably barking because he was scared and disoriented. He looked down at the dog, whose watery eyes still blinked rapidly from the spray. "And you attacked him for it?" Guilt gnawed at Mark. "There's a vet clinic a few blocks away. Let me drive you." The soldier hesitated, his grip tightening on Buddy. But the dog's whimpers made the decision for him. With a stiff nod, he followed Mark to the patrol car. The ride was tense. Mark kept glancing at the rearview mirror, watching as the soldier cradled Buddy, whispering reassurances. "What's his story?" Mark finally asked. The soldier ran a hand through Buddy's fur. "He was with me overseas. Bomb detection. Saved my unit more times than I can count." His voice softened. "When I got discharged, they let me adopt him. He's not just a dog, he's my partner." Mark swallowed hard. He had just heard a hero. When they reached the clinic, Mark rushed ahead to hold the door open. The vet immediately took Buddy in, flushing his eyes and checking his vitals. The soldier sat in silence, his hands clenched into fists. Mark hesitated before sitting beside him. "I messed up," he admitted, "but I want to make it right." The soldier finally looked at him. "Then start by learning the difference between a threat and someone who's just lost." Mark nodded, taking those words to heart. The waiting room was eerily quiet, save for the occasional muffled sounds coming from the examination room, where Buddy was being treated. The soldier sat stiffly, his eyes fixed on the floor, his jaw clenched. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his chair, the weight of his mistake pressing down on him like a ton of bricks. After what felt like an eternity, the vet finally stepped out. "He's going to be okay," she said, offering a reassuring smile. "His eyes are irritated, but we flushed out the spray, and he should recover fully in a few days. Just keep him comfortable and use the eye drops I prescribed. The soldier exhaled, his shoulders finally relaxing. Thank you. Mark felt a strange sense of relief, though it didn't erase his guilt. He watched as the soldier gently lifted Buddy off the exam table, the dog nuzzling into his chest, tail wagging weakly. As they stepped outside, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the pavement. Mark cleared his throat. Look, I know saying sorry doesn't fix what I did, but if there's anything I can do— The soldier studied him for a long moment. You're right. Saying sorry isn't enough. He adjusted Buddy in his arms. But actions speak louder than words. Mark nodded. Then let me prove it. The soldier hesitated, then sighed.
Fine.
Meet me here tomorrow morning. If you really want to make it right, you're going to learn what it means to protect, not just police. Mark wasn't sure what he meant, but he knew one thing. This was his chance to redeem himself. The next morning, Mark arrived at the clinic parking lot just as the sun peeked over the horizon. He spotted the soldier leaning against his truck, Buddy sitting at his feet, looking much better than the night before. You showed up, the soldier said, arms crossed. Mark nodded. I meant what I said. The soldier studied him before gesturing to Buddy. This dog saved my life more times than I can count. You need to understand what that means. Mark glanced down at Buddy, who stared back with cautious but intelligent eyes. I'm listening. The soldier smirked.
Good.
Because today you're going to train like a handler. Mark frowned. Handler? You know how to control people, but do you know how to read a situation before it gets out of control? The soldier knelt beside Buddy and gave him a silent hand signal. Instantly, the dog sat at attention, ears perked. Buddy doesn't just react, he assesses. He protects without harming unless absolutely necessary. Something you should have done yesterday. Mark swallowed hard, but he nodded. He deserved that reminder. Let's go, the soldier said, leading Mark toward a nearby training field. For the next few hours, Mark followed orders. He learned basic K9 commands, the importance of body language, and most importantly, how to read a situation before acting. It was humbling. Buddy was disciplined, precise, and loyal. Watching him work made Mark realize just how much he had underestimated the intelligence and control these animals had. As the morning stretched into afternoon, Mark wiped sweat from his brow. All right, he admitted. I get it. I messed up. I didn't assess, I reacted. The soldier nodded. And that could have cost a life. Mark looked at Buddy, then back at the soldier. What's your name, by the way? The soldier smirked. James Carter. He extended a hand. Former Army K9 unit. Mark shook it. Mark Reynolds. Officer. Trying to be a better one. Carter nodded.
Good.
Because I'm not done with you yet. Mark chuckled. Figures. As they walked off the field together, Buddy trotting between them, Mark realized something. This wasn't just about making amends. This was a second chance to be the kind of officer he should have been all along. Over the next few weeks, Mark met with Carter and Buddy every morning before his shift. What started as a lesson in handling a service dog quickly turned into something deeper. Carter didn't just teach him commands. He taught him patience, awareness, and the responsibility that came with protecting others. One morning, after an intense training session, Carter tossed Mark a bottle of water and sat down on a bench. Buddy flopped at his feet, panting but alert. You're improving, Carter admitted. You actually think before you act now. Mark smirked. That's the goal, right? Carter nodded, but his expression turned serious. I wasn't just hard on you because of what you did to Buddy. It's bigger than that. Mark took a sip of water. Yeah? What do you mean? Carter exhaled. Cops like you, good ones, have to understand that force isn't the first option. It's the last. He ran a hand through Buddy's fur. Out there, people are scared.
Just like Buddy was that day.
Sometimes, all they need is a moment of understanding. Mark listened, really listened. He had always prided himself on doing his job right, but this experience had shown him that right wasn't always black and white. Just then, Mark's radio crackled. Disturbance at East Market. Suspect is agitated and armed with a knife. Mark stiffened. Carter raised an eyebrow. Time to put what you've learned to the test. Mark nodded and bolted toward his patrol car. As he sped toward the scene, Carter's words echoed in his mind. Assess before you act. When he arrived, a young man stood outside a convenience store, pacing wildly, gripping a small knife. Bystanders kept their distance, murmuring anxiously. Mark stepped out slowly, hands visible, keeping his voice calm. Hey, man. What's going on? The young man turned, his eyes wide with fear. Stay back. I don't want to hurt anyone. Mark's training kicked in. Not a threat, he's scared. He took a deep breath. I believe you. Let's talk. The young man's grip on the knife wavered. I lost my job. My family won't help. I have nothing left. Mark took a step closer. That's not true. There's always another way. Let's figure this out together. Seconds felt like hours. But then, slowly, the young man dropped the knife. As backup officers arrived to secure the scene, Mark exhaled in relief. No one was hurt. No force was needed. Later that evening, he met Carter at their usual spot. Had a situation today, he admitted. I handled it differently. Carter smirked. And Mark patted Buddy's head. No one got hurt. And I think I actually helped. Carter nodded approvingly. Then I'd say you're finally getting it. Mark grinned. For the first time in a long time, he felt like the kind of cop he had always wanted to be. Mark had thought that moment at East Market was his turning point, but life had other plans. A week later, he was on patrol when a call came in, hostage situation at a downtown bank. Mark's heart pounded as he turned on his sirens and sped toward the scene. When he arrived, SWAT was already setting up, their rifles trained on the bank entrance. A masked gunman had taken 6 people hostage, including a child. Mark's gut told him this wasn't a typical robbery. He spotted Carter in the crowd, arms crossed, Buddy sitting alert at his feet. Mark made his way over. You here to watch or help? He asked. Carter smirked. Depends. You gonna do this the old way or the right way? Mark exhaled. He knew what Carter meant. No rushing in. No immediate force. Assess before you act. Ignoring the SWAT commander's wary glance, Mark approached the negotiator. What do we know? Suspect is mid-30s, ex-military. Seems desperate, the negotiator said. Keeps saying he didn't want this. But he's panicking. Mark's mind clicked into place. Not a criminal, he's lost. I need to talk to him, Mark said. The commander scoffed. Not a chance. We wait for SWAT to get a shot. Mark glanced at Carter. His friend gave a single nod. Mark turned back. Give me 5 minutes. If I fail, you do it your way. The commander hesitated, then sighed. 5 minutes. Mark stepped up to the doors, hands raised. Through the glass, the gunman tensed. Hey, Mark called. I'm Mark. I just want to talk. The man's grip on his weapon tightened. Stay back. I will, Mark promised. But I know you don't want this. Let me help. The man's breathing was ragged. I just needed money. I lost everything. Now, they're gonna kill me. No one's dying today, Mark said firmly. Tell me what you need. Seconds stretched. Then, the man's hands started shaking. I just want to go home, he whispered. Mark took a deep breath. Then let's make that happen. Put the gun down, and we'll figure this out together. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, painfully, the man set the weapon on the ground. Within seconds, officers swarmed in, securing the hostages and cuffing the suspect. Mark stepped back, his heart racing. Carter approached, Buddy trotting beside him.
Not bad, cop, he said.
Mark let out a shaky laugh. Guess I'm learning. Carter clapped him on the back. Yeah. And something tells me this is just the beginning. Mark looked out at the flashing lights, the relieved hostages, the man who would get a second chance instead of a bullet. He nodded.
Yeah.
I think so too. A month had passed since the bank standoff, and Mark was starting to feel like a different officer. His time training with Carter and Buddy had changed the way he saw his job. He wasn't just enforcing the law, he was protecting people in ways he had never considered before. One evening, As Mark was finishing up his shift, his radio crackled. Officer down. Suspect armed. 5th and Main. All available units respond. Mark's stomach dropped. He flipped on his sirens and sped toward the scene. When he arrived, his worst fear became reality. An officer was lying on the ground, bleeding from a gunshot wound to the leg. The suspect, a wiry man with wild eyes, was still holding the gun, pacing erratically in the middle of the street. Other officers had their weapons drawn, shouting at him to drop his weapon. But Mark saw something different. The man's hands were shaking, his eyes darting around in panic. Carter's voice echoed in his head. "Assess before you act." Mark took a slow step forward. "Hey, buddy," he called out. "You don't want this to end badly. Let's talk." The suspect flinched, but didn't fire. His grip on the gun was uncertain. Mark continued. "I can see you're scared. I know you didn't mean for this to happen." The man swallowed hard. I didn't. I didn't know what to do. He tried to grab me, and his voice broke. Mark nodded. "I hear you. But right now, the only way this ends well is if you put the gun down." The other officers tensed, their fingers tightening on their triggers. Mark took another step. "I give you my word. You'll make it out of this alive if you trust me." A long silence. Then, finally, the man let the gun slip from his fingers and fell to his knees, sobbing. Officers moved in quickly to secure him, but Mark's focus was on the wounded officer. He rushed over, pressing down on the bleeding wound. "You're gonna be okay," Mark assured him. "Stay with me." As the paramedics arrived, Carter appeared beside him, watching the scene unfold. "You did it again," he said, a hint of pride in his voice. Mark exhaled.
"Yeah.
"But it still feels like I've got a long way to go." Carter smirked.
Good.
"That means you're still learning." Mark looked around. The man who would get help instead of dying in the street. The officer who would live because Mark had reacted fast but smart. He finally understood. This was what being a cop was supposed to be. Months had passed since Mark had first met Carter and Buddy, and in that time, everything had changed. He no longer saw himself as just a cop. He was a protector, a listener, someone who understood that force wasn't always the answer. One afternoon, Mark was finishing his shift when he got a call from Carter. "Meet me at the training field," was all he said. When Mark arrived, he saw Carter standing in the middle of the field, Buddy sitting attentively at his feet. Carter held something in his hands, a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" Mark asked as he approached. Carter handed it over. "My official deployment orders. I'm heading back overseas to train K-9 units." Mark's stomach tightened. "You're leaving?" Carter nodded.
Yeah.
"But I think my work here is done." He looked Mark up and down. "You're not the same guy who sprayed my dog." Mark huffed a laugh. "No, I'm not." He looked down at Buddy, scratching the dog behind his ears. "I owe you both a lot." Carter smirked. "You owe yourself. You did the work." He gave Buddy a silent signal, and the dog stood, wagging his tail before trotting over to Mark and nudging his hand. Mark knelt, rubbing the dog's head. "Gonna miss you, Buddy." Carter exhaled. "Look, I don't say this often, but I respect you. Not just because you changed, but because you wanted to." Mark met his gaze. "And I respect you for showing me how." Carter extended a hand. "Then I'd say we're even." Mark shook it. "Not even close. But I'll take it." As Carter walked away, Buddy following at his side, Mark stood there for a long time, watching. Then he took a deep breath, turned around, and walked back toward his patrol car, ready to keep doing the job the right way.
The end.